Yo, what's going on, Lakers fans? In today's video, I'm going to tell you why you need to pay close attention to the situation happening out in Philadelphia with Quentin Grimes and the situation out in Utah with Walker Kessler. So like this video, comment down below, mash that hype button, and don't forget to hit subscribe on this channel, and let's dive into things. Alright, so by now you've likely heard the news. The Utah Jazz and Walker Kessler are unlikely to reach an extension agreement before next season, which means Walker Kessler will effectively become a restricted free agent. Now, there are some very practical reasons for why the Jazz and Walker Kessler would hold off on extension agreements. It doesn't necessarily mean that the Jazz are low on Walker Kessler or that Walker Kessler wants to pinch the Jazz for everything that he's worth. He does have a very low cap hold of only $14 million next summer, and if the Jazz are planning to be competitive and planning to use their cap space, that would benefit them to have Walker Kessler on their books for that low of a cap hold, because then they could make all of their signings with cap space and then go above the cap to re-sign Walker Kessler. This situation is very similar to the Lakers and Austin Reaves, because Austin Reaves has a very low cap hold of about $20 million. But more on that a little bit later. Now let's shift our focus over to Quentin Grimes. As has been reported, it doesn't seem like the Philadelphia 76ers and Quentin Grimes are on the same page at all. They offered him a 4-year contract of about $40 million, so that's just around $9 to $10 million per year. Quentin Grimes thinks he's worth $25 million. The likely answer to both of these parties' problems is somewhere in the middle. The Sixers should probably offer him at least the full mid-level exception of $15 to $18 million. But it doesn't look like that's the resolution that they're going to come to. Right now, it seems like Quentin Grimes will either take his $8 million qualifying offer, which effectively makes him an expiring contract, and by next summer, he's an unrestricted free agent and he can go anywhere, or the Sixers may offer him a 1-year inflated deal of about, I don't know, $18 to $20 million. They'll probably ask him to waive his implicit no trade clause, but those are the two options that seem most likely for the Philadelphia 76ers and Quentin Grimes. So how do these two players, Quentin Grimes and Walker Kessler, relate to one another? Well, I have a dark horse plan for the Lakers that I think is worth at least considering. Because what if I told you that by the start of the 2026-27 season, the Lakers could have both of these players on their roster? And I've got a semi-realistic, pretty practical 2-step plan to make it all happen. Now, it's a little bit controversial, but let me explain myself first and add the necessary caveats before you can scream at the tube. Part 1 of this 2-step plan involves the Lakers re-engaging the Utah Jazz to trade for Walker Kessler. But in this deal, we are going to have to include Austin Reaves. Now, I know you're freaking out. I know that sounds crazy. Why would we give up on a player who just averaged 20 points and 6 assists for a guy who only averaged 10 points and 9 rebounds? But let me explain. Let me pull up the trade that I've concocted. Let me run through it. Let me go through the necessary caveats, and then we'll move forward. So here's part 1. Here's the deal with the Utah Jazz. Now, I want to heavily caveat everything and say that I am not enthused about trading Austin Reaves. I don't necessarily want to trade Austin Reaves, but if Austin Reaves is the player that the Utah Jazz want, and I know on the back end of this that I have a replacement ready for Austin Reaves, then I can kind of make it make sense in my mind for the short term and long term. So again, I'm not advocating for trading Austin Reaves, but if you told me that the Lakers made a deal like this, I would not be opposed to it because it kind of makes logistical sense. All right, so here's a rough draft initial deal with the Utah Jazz. The Lakers would be giving up Austin Reaves and Dalton Connect. They'd be giving up the 2031 first, unprotected, or maybe we protect it top 4. And we'd also be removing the top 4 protection on the 2027 first that we already owe Utah. I know it's been reported that the Utah Jazz want Austin Reaves and 2 firsts. Well, guess what? The Lakers don't have 2 firsts. So in lieu of that, this is the best offer that I can concoct surrounding Austin Reaves that kind of mimics a 2 first scenario. So this would be part 1 of my 2-step plan. In a vacuum, I do agree that the Lakers are overpaying a little bit. Austin Reaves is a very valuable player, but I think the Lakers in this deal would be swapping Austin Reaves for potentially the better fitting player, and a player in Walker Kessler who has been in his short career in the NBA one of the best shot blockers in the league. He's been in the top 3 or 5 in blocks per game in his first 3 years in the league, and that's nothing to scoff at. And he's a player who, even if we wanted to retain DeAndre Ayton past this season, he's a player who can fit with DeAndre Ayton in the short term and just take over as our full-time center moving forward. And so Walker Kessler, while in a vacuum, I would agree that he's not as good as Austin Reaves and he doesn't provide everything that Austin Reaves provides. For this team, this Luka Doncic centric team, he may be a better fit. And so this is why, even if I concede that the Lakers are overpaying in this deal in a vacuum, this is why I could get behind a deal like this. Again, I'm not saying the Lakers should do this. I'm not saying I'm gung-ho about trading Austin Reaves. I'm just saying if they engaged the Utah Jazz and decided to trade Austin Reaves for Walker Kessler, this is how I would be doing the mental gymnastics in my mind, and I wouldn't necessarily have to bend too much. So that effectively is step one for the Lakers. They trade Austin Reaves, Dalton Connect, the 2031 first, remove the top 4 protection on the 27 first, and get back Walker Kessler, get their young starting center of the future, and Kyle Anderson for the next 2 years at $9 million. And they can also ship out Kyle Anderson next year as an expiring salary ballast. And then keep in mind, Walker Kessler has an even lower cap hold than Austin Reaves, $14 million to $20 million. And the Lakers can effectively do the same thing with Walker Kessler that they were planning to do with Austin Reaves. Walker Kessler, with his $14 million cap hold, the Lakers would have about $58 to $63 million in cap space if LeBron James doesn't return. And what that means is they can make all of their signings using $63 million of cap space. And then after they've made those signings, they can go back to Walker Kessler and then re-sign Walker Kessler to his new deal. So again, that's part one. The Lakers would execute this trade before the trade deadline in season, and Walker Kessler would help in the short term and the long term. The Lakers bag their young rim protecting center of the future next to Luka Doncic. And so let's move on to part 2 of my 2-step plan. All right, step number 2, and this one's going to require a little bit of patience from Lakers fans. So what the Lakers are going to do after they've traded Austin Reaves for Walker Kessler is they're going to ride out the season with the roster that they have. And now, another reason why I think it's semi-okay to trade a player like Austin Reaves is because the Lakers signed a guy like Jake LaRavia, who could presumably do an adequate enough job filling in for Austin Reaves at the shooting guard position next to Luka Doncic, especially if you believe in Jake LaRavia's ceiling. We kind of already have an internal built-in stopgap replacement for Austin Reaves. Obviously, Jake LaRavia is not the playmaker and ball handler and quick shifty guard that Austin Reaves is. But if you're just looking for a baseline replacement level understudy, that's Jake LaRavia. So with that said, step 1, we trade Austin Reaves for Walker Kessler. Now, if we look at the second step, the Lakers will ride out the rest of this season with that core group of Walker Kessler, Luka Doncic, Marcus Smart, Jake LaRavia, etc., etc. And through the back channels, throughout the season, Rob Pelinka will be whispering some sweet nothings to Quentin Grimes and his agent's ear, legally, of course, without anybody finding out, with the hopes and with the plans to eventually sign Quentin Grimes in the summer of 2026 when he is an unrestricted free agent, to sign Quentin Grimes to a new, let's say, $20 million multi-year deal. And the Lakers would be able to do that with all of the cap space they're projected to have, because again, Walker Kessler is only going to be on the books for a low $14 million cap hold. So the Lakers would have upwards of around $55 to $60 million to spend, and Quentin Grimes could get a third of that. So that is part 2. And moving forward, again, this is going to require some patience, but I expect, if everything goes to plan, as unlikely as this is, by 2026-27, the Lakers will have a core of Quentin Grimes, Luka Doncic, Walker Kessler, and then fill in the edges around that. Maybe Marcus Smart is back on his player option. Maybe DeAndre Ayton is back. The Lakers would still have around $30 to $40 million in cap space to use after signing Quentin Grimes. Again, this assumes that LeBron James isn't coming back. Maybe LeBron James is part of that core, but that is how I think the Lakers could get Quentin Grimes and Walker Kessler. Now, there is another scenario where we could get both in season this season. And so if you look at the second number 2 asterisk point on this two-step plan, you will see that I have outlined a scenario where the Lakers actually trade for Quentin Grimes at the deadline. And instead of putting Dalton Connect in the Austin Reaves package for Walker Kessler, we would hold off on Dalton Connect and ship him to the Philadelphia 76ers for Quentin Grimes instead. And why I think this is a pretty realistic scenario is because if Quentin Grimes signs his qualifying offer of $8 million, he's effectively just riding this season out with the intention of becoming an unrestricted free agent and flipping the Sixers off and saying goodbye. So the Sixers would want to get something out of Quentin Grimes before he walks. And even in the second scenario where the Philadelphia 76ers give Quentin Grimes a bloated 1-year, $20 million deal, they will still want to get something for Quentin Grimes using that salary ballast because it seems like that relationship has soured. Both parties have been so far apart. And so even if the Philadelphia 76ers re-sign Quentin Grimes, I think he is still very eligible trade fodder by the deadline. And so the only question is whether the Lakers would have enough assets remaining to entice the Sixers. But again, if Quentin Grimes is expiring, especially if he's on his qualifying offer, the Sixers can't be choosers. They're beggars at that point. They just want to get something out of nothing. And if they can turn an expiring Quentin Grimes, who's going to walk from them anyways, into Dalton Connect, who still has 2 years left on his deal, I think they would do that. Now, obviously, this would require the Utah Jazz to be okay with Dalton Connect being withheld from them. And so would Austin Reaves and the 2031 first and the removal of the top 4 protection on the 2027 first that we already owe them, would that be enough for the Jazz? I don't know. But let's say it is, and the Lakers are able to take Dalton Connect and then give him over to the Philadelphia 76ers for Quentin Grimes' expiring contract. Then that's the scenario where the Lakers in 2026, as early as January 2026, would already have Walker Kessler, Quentin Grimes, Luka Doncic, Marcus Smart, Jake LaRavia, DeAndre Ayton, Rui Hachimura. So just think about that core, because to me, that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, it sucks that Austin Reaves isn't a part of that core, but again, if you have a replacement like Quentin Grimes, who we've already seen works very well with Luka Doncic, then I think you at least have to consider a move like that. Now, before I close this video, let's really quickly talk about Walker Kessler and Quentin Grimes as individual players and why I think they would be perfect fits for the Lakers. All right, so Walker Kessler, I'm not going to talk too deeply about Walker Kessler since he's been on our minds for the last 2 years, it seems like, but again, as I mentioned before, Walker Kessler in his 3 years in the NBA has been in the top 3 to 5 shot blockers in the league every single year. In fact, in his career, he averages 2.4 blocks per game. Also in his career, he averages 9.2 rebounds per game. He essentially averages a double-double with 2 blocks per game in his career, which is very impressive. 9.4 points, 9.2 rebounds, 2.4 blocks on 68% from the field without having a playmaker like Luka Doncic next to him. So just think about that. And Walker Kessler has been relatively healthy in his young NBA career as well. 74 games played, 64 games played, 58 games played. Now, we have to asterisk some of this stuff with the Utah Jazz as well, because last season they were trying to tank, and at some point in the season, they began sitting all of their competitive players. But for the most part, Walker Kessler has been very durable, and when you look at his sturdy body and frame, it's easy to see why. So there's my case for Walker Kessler. He'd be a perfect fit next to Luka Doncic, and again, he's the type of center who can be the lone center for the Lakers moving forward with or without DeAndre Ayton. Imagine a twin towers of Walker Kessler and DeAndre Ayton. Now, it may get pretty clunky because neither of the two are three-point shooters, but in terms of protecting the rim and gobbling up rebounds, that's a pretty formidable front court. And by the way, Walker Kessler just turned 24 years old, so keep that in mind. All right, so there's the quick case for Walker Kessler. Let's move on to Quentin Grimes. All right, so Quentin Grimes is a shooting guard slash small forward, although small forward is probably stretching it a little bit, but he is only 25 years old. He is 6'5" with a 6'8" wingspan, weighs a pretty good and solid 209 pounds. Last season with the Philadelphia 76ers, granted, it was on a smaller sample size and it was kind of in a looter in a riot situation towards the tail end of the season. Quentin Grimes, through about 25 games, averaged 22 points per game, 5.2 rebounds per game, 4.5 assists per game, and hit 2.9 threes a game. That's nearly 3 threes a game. That's like Malik Beasley sniper shooting type of numbers. And so Quentin Grimes was able to show off his ceiling towards the tail end of the season with the 76ers, and it's why he believes he's worth about $25 million. Now, I don't think he's worth $25 million, but $20 million? Sure. To bank on that upside, to take a flyer on that upside? Sure. And so Quentin Grimes, we've seen his ceiling with the Philadelphia 76ers. It's 22 points, 5 rebounds, 4.5 assists. He's shown that if given the usage and the ability to play around with the ball a little bit, he can do some stuff. He can dish the rock. He can handle the ball. He can get buckets on his own. And he's still a stellar three-point shooter. Also, Quentin Grimes is pretty sneakily athletic and explosive, which is what I like. But even apart from this small stretch and his gaudy numbers that he was able to showcase with the 76ers, even if you don't believe in that, let's look at what he's done in his career as a whole. So here are Quentin Grimes' numbers through the first 4 years of his career. And I'm actually just as impressed with what Quentin Grimes has done his first 4 years as I am with what he did through the last 28 games of the season with the Philadelphia 76ers, averaging nearly 22 points per game. Because in his first 4 years in the league, Quentin Grimes was more of a tertiary 3-and-D type of shooting guard. So think Max Christie-ish, a better Max Christie who could shoot the lights out from 3. And I like that Quentin Grimes has already shown us that he can play a more tertiary limited role and doesn't necessarily need the ball in his hands. So if you look at his time with Luka Doncic in Dallas, in just 23 minutes per game, he was coming off the bench for much of that time. He already averaged 10 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, which is already pretty healthy. And then he shot 46% from the field and nearly 40% from 3, knocking down 1.7 threes a game. Those are numbers that we wish Max Christie would have averaged with us consistently, but Quentin Grimes has already done it. If you look at his second year with the New York Knicks, he averaged 11 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists on 47% from the field, 38.6% from 3, knocking down 2.2 threes a game. So Quentin Grimes, whether you scale him down, whether you scale him up, is a very effective player and one who I think will mesh very perfectly next to a Luka Doncic. And in his career, Quentin Grimes has averaged 10.4 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. He's hit nearly 2 threes a game and shot a very healthy 37.5% from 3. He's a very efficient and effective volume 3-point shooter. And again, we just saw a little glimpse of his upside and ceiling with the Sixers last season because we can scale him up. If Luka Doncic, for whatever reason, goes down, he can have the ball in his hands and he can do Austin Reaves sorts of things with the ball. So that's my pitch for Quentin Grimes. All right, let's recap everything for the people in the back. My 2-step dark horse plan for the Lakers this season to get Walker Kessler and Quentin Grimes is to, number 1, re-engage the Utah Jazz in an Austin Reaves-centric package for Walker Kessler. And then number 2, get Quentin Grimes, whether it's trading for Quentin Grimes in season with like a Dalton Connect or waiting for Quentin Grimes in 2026 and using cap space to sign him when he's an unrestricted free agent. Either way, if everything shakes out with this kooky plan of mine, I expect the Lakers by the start of the 2026-27 season to have Quentin Grimes and Walker Kessler next to Luka Doncic. So what do you guys think about this plan? Is it too crazy and unlikely to think about? And are you just that high in Austin Reaves that you don't even want to consider it? Or is it so crazy that it might actually work? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video, and most importantly, please hit subscribe. This has been Jonathan Hernandez of the Lakers Legacy Podcast, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace.